Greetings! Welcome to the pilot episode of the Modders Challenge. And to just sort of explain a bit, what the Modders Challenge is the goal is to create and film the creation of a mod from start to finish in a single month based on a challenge that you guys issued to me at the beginning of the month. Now, obviously, since this is the pilot episode, we don't actually have any modded challenges being issued by you guys just yet, so I've created a challenge for myself. And, of course, whether or not this series actually gets picked up on the channel depends entirely on our Patreon subscribers, because we'll also be airing 2 other pilot episodes at the end of March. This is just one of 3, and they can choose up to 2 pilots that are going to become full-featured series on the channel. And that's part of our Patreon rewards program. And I'm really excited for this series in particular. And actually, I kind of got the idea for the Modders Challenge series based off of something Melkor did back when he hit 800 followers on Tumblr. What he did is he held a sort of raffle contest, and the top 3 raffle winners got to give him the mod, like the Core G Companion or Waffle Warfare, and then he went around and he built that mod and released it on the Nexus. The idea is kind of similar here. Basically, the Modders Challenge is a challenge issued by you guys to make the type of mod, and you can define what that challenge detail as you want. And I will take that challenge, and then I'll try and build a mod based on that challenge within a month's time frame. Filming most of the central aspects of the mod, but keeping it within about a 45-minute time window. This isn't going to be like the Let's Mod Morrowind series, where we're providing a tutorial. This is just going to be me creating a mod based on the challenge, and me filming bits of it, and me sort of explaining my thought process with the creation, and what I think the challenge is referring to, and how to best interpret that challenge into an actual physical mod in the game. And at the end of the month, we'll release an episode, and we'll also release the mod, whether or not it's actually finished as well. See, that's kind of the thing. A challenge means that there is a potential for a fail state. And so I'm going to release whatever progress I have on the mod at the end of the month. No matter if I finish it, that means I've successfully completed the challenge, and you guys have a complete mod that you can download from the Nexus. If I fail the challenge, well, I'll still release the mod on the Nexus, and hopefully you guys can use it to maybe learn something from how to make mods, or something like that. But it'll have to be updated later on, I suppose, and finished, because I will be finishing these mods eventually. It's just it might not be within the month time frame. It might take a year, it might take 6 months. You know, I'll get to it when I get to it. And so that's the thing. And obviously, these challenges do come with a number of limitations. For example, we will only be accepting modded challenges that are within my particular skill set. I'm a content modder. I cannot, for the life of me, create text models or stuff like that. I create quests, I create dungeons, I can create towns, I can even create landmasses if they're small enough, and I can create house mods. Those are the things I'm good at creating. Can't really do something that's too far, away from my particular area of expertise. So don't ask me for some sort of major gameplay overhaul where it involves a ton of crazy scripting and adds a ton of new features to the game. I'm a content modder. I make content like dungeons and stuff like that. Ask me for those kind of things. Like, issue me a particular challenge that you're interested in one of those categories. And there are a few other limitations. A challenge cannot involve more than 5 interiors, and can only involve a maximum of 3 quests. So the idea here is that we want the mods to be small enough, finish them in a month, since that's our goal. So this is just going to be small mods. They're not going to be huge mods, but they're going to be small, hopefully quality content mods Think something sort of similar to scale to a Hermit's Request, my quest mod on the Nexus, or my other quest mod on the Nexus, or even something on a similar scale to Redania Village. You know, that's a shack village. It didn't take a huge amount of time to make. I think it just took 30-40 development hours to build. And that kind of shows, you know, some of the possible different mod sizes I can create within a month's time frame. And another thing I need to explain, because if it's not obvious to you guys, if you all issue challenges at the same time, I can only actually respond to one of them per month. So here's what we're going to do. In the first week of the month, you guys are going to submit modder challenges, and then I'm going to create a poll with all those modder challenges listed in the poll, and you guys are going to vote on which modder challenge you want to become the finalized accepted modder challenge. And then I'll spend the last 3 weeks of the month actually building the mod, and then I'll release whatever I have at the end of the month. Now obviously this is going to be fairly difficult to do since I'm also running a YouTube channel at the same time, but that's part of the appeal, is the fact that there is a very real risk of failure with this modder challenge series. And so we'll just see what we can create and what is just beyond the realm of possibility. And it'll all be driven by content you guys suggest. So, I'm really excited for this series actually, and I really hope that it gets picked up by the Patreon subscribers. And even though it's going to be a ton of work, it also gives me an opportunity to actually get back to and releasing mods. More importantly, I haven't released a mod since 2010. That was over 6 years ago. It's really high time I get back to just releasing content, whether or not it's finished, in some form. Because, you know, that is kind of important, is actually setting deadlines for yourself and getting that content out there. Which is also kind of how I run the YouTube channel a little bit. Though it is distressing at times how many times I don't actually get content finished in time for the deadline. But anyway, so I hope that explains everything in a clear enough manner for you guys to understand what the Modder's Challenge is. I'm probably going to write a massive description in the video description of what the Modder's Challenge is and all the rules and stuff like that. So read that if, you know, this was at all confusing, this first introduction. Please, please, please read that, and hopefully you guys will be able to understand where I'm coming. And so I've already written a Modder challenge that I've issued to myself for the pilot episode, since we have to have something to film. And the challenge is as follows. Modder's Challenge, Episode 1 Pilot. Build a Velothian house dungeon mod that the player gradually unlocks over time, finding new parts of the dungeon, clearing them out, and then converting these parts into part of a larger player home over a series of quests. Can involve any type of tile sets, so long as the main house and intro dungeon are Velothian styled, and the house should also be purchasable at first. So, allow me to just sort of explain the idea here. It's an idea I had because I don't know of any other house mods that are quite like this for Morrowind. Is you find a house mod, it's infested with something, and then you buy it for a moderate fee, and then you have some builders come in and update the house a little bit, but then they discover a dungeon. And then you can clear out the dungeon, and after the dungeon is done, you can have builders come in again and sort of update that part of the dungeon to become a cozy part of your home. And then you can keep doing that for a bit until there's no more dungeon. So since our target here is 5 interiors, 3 quests, we're going to try and create the entire thing in just 5 interiors and 3 quests. And we'll see how we do. We'll probably also update the exterior a little bit, and we'll be using a lot of global variables for this. And this will actually be an opportunity to use some scripts that I don't think we've showcased before in Let's Mod Morrowind, for example. But anyway, I guess we just need to get to it then. Now, another thing I'm going to show you guys is I'm going to show you guys the timestamp that's on this video here. You'll see in the corner on Bandicam, it is the 11th of March. Our goal is to get this mod finished by the end of March, which is March 31st. So, we have about 20 days to build a fairly sizable mod, and then get it released on the Nexus in time for the release of this video. So that's the challenge, and periodically, while I'm creating the mod, I'll point out the timestamp to you guys so you can sort of get an idea of how long it's taking to get this progress done. And with that said, we should probably get our editor opened up. Alright, here's our construction set. And basically, I'm going to build this Velothyan home in the Bitter Coast region. And you might be wondering why. The reason, really, is because I haven't actually seen a whole lot of Velothyan architecture in the Bitter Coast region. And I really, really like the Bitter Coast region. It's one of my favorite regions, honestly. It's debatable why. I just think it's more atmospheric than a lot of the other regions. I mean, the West Gash, for example, can get a little plain looking, to my mind. I also really like the Grayslands region for some reason, but Velothyan, and it's been done in the past, and it's not terribly exciting. Whereas a Velothyan manor sitting right in the middle of a swamp, that sounds pretty interesting to me. Alright, so I wanted our Velothyan manor to be along the coast here, so I'm going to build up around over here. Which I know seems like a really strange location for a Velothyan manor. I mean, you got Daedric Ruins to the right of you, you got Daedric Ruins to the left of you. It just seems like a terrible place for someone to live, and that's the entire point, actually. I'm going to have this Velothyan manor be owned by some sort of eccentric uncle, and the nephew will send you on a quest to sort of find out what happened to his uncle, who lives in this isolated Velothyan manor near a very dangerous area of the Bitter Coast region. And the player will probably find that he's been murdered by a Daedroth or something like that. And so that'll be sort of the intro to our quest, and I just think this is sort of an atmospheric area to build our manor in. And the question, though, is where do we actually want our manor? This is the most open space, really, right near the coast, except it's on a hill, which is not ideal. Don't like building on hills, generally. They're not very flat, you see. So, let's see. Do we want to build down here? Building down here puts us really close to the Daedric Ruin, which might be just a little too close, plus this is a really narrow strip between the swamp and the ocean. So I'm just going to start out here. We're going to find our Velothyan houses, which should be under XVH. Don't want that one. A little too small. That's an interesting shape. Might go with this at first. Okay, I'm going to pause here and then build the exterior and sort of explain what I'm trying to do here to you guys later on. Alright, so I've partially completed the exterior of our little, Velothyan manor. You can sort of see it here, and this isn't the finalized state. Basically, some of these objects are activators, and we're going to deactivate some of them and potentially activate some new buildings or something later on. I haven't quite decided what I'm going to do yet, so that's something to consider in the future. But, I do want this to be something that the player can build up over time a little bit, but not overly much. It's not going to be a town, it's just going to be a manor. So a few of these are activators that will be disabled in the future, but this is how it's going to look like when the player first sees this manor. And you can see it kind of has a shack walkway leading up to the main entryway, and you got some walls marking off a small compound. And I also got a little bit of a dining area over here, and just sort of overlooks the swamp. I thought it might be, you know, something that would be kind of fun to do. Just add a little overlook over here. And you'll notice I've also used some of these Velothian end wall pieces to sort of create some lamp posts along the walkway here, and I just think that kind of looks interesting. It's an interesting looking design. I'm not in love with it necessarily, but I think it looks good for now. Also here in the back we have a small dock coming out from here. And we might add in a quest later on for the player to get a longboat captain to maybe stop by and offer transportation to other parts of Odenfell. You know, again later on, like after they've cleared the first dungeon or something like that. And anyway, so far I'm pretty satisfied with how this exterior looks. We do still need to add in some lights, I think. So we'll do that in a second. But overall, I'm pretty satisfied with how it turns out, and of course we'll be modifying the exterior later on. And you will notice that it has been a couple of days since I started doing the exterior. One thing that we are definitely going to be needing to work on a lot is time management, because I have to work on a lot of videos for the channel at the same time that I'm creating a 100% complete mod, or at least that's the goal, for the end of March. So we still have about 18 days left to do that, so we're going to work on the interior in just a bit and hopefully get the first interior done today so that we won't be so terribly far behind in what we need to accomplish for the rest of the month. So let me just, let's find some light sources to add in around here, and then we'll be pretty much done with the exterior for now. Alright, we're going to be using these Dunmer streetlights, and the reason why, and you can see this over here, it's, I think it's just D Streetlight 01. The reason why is because they have a really low face count. They only have a face count of 400, so that means that the exterior will be pretty frame rate friendly. And you do kind of have to watch out for Dunmer style lanterns a bit, because a few of them can have a really high face count of like 3000 to 4000, and I want to avoid low frame rates as much as possible, especially since we're making this to be a mod that actually gets released to the public. We have to consider the sort of lower end computers out there that people will probably be using to play our mod with. And we just want to make sure that they can load up the exterior cell without any major issues. I mean, that is definitely one of my main concerns, I think. It's just making sure that the entire mod is playable from start to finish for everyone. And that's, you know, a major concern that most modders have, I think. I kind of have the impression that this is going to be pretty interesting looking. I mean, you got lanterns over here, you got lanterns over there. I don't know. There's a pretty long passageway right here that's just kind of dark. I'm kind of thinking that we might want to add some more different kinds of streetlights, maybe? I don't know. Like maybe some Dunmer signposts that have a few additional lights hanging from them. I don't know, I'll have to check this out in game and, you know, see if that's a good idea or not. I think I screwed this one up over here. There we go, that looks nice. Can't really tell how it'll look at night in the editor, but we'll check it out in game. And yeah, that pretty much leaves off everything. So next stop is the interior, the first interior, and we're going to try and finish that today, so we'll see what happens. Alright, welcome back. Today is the 18th of March. I have just finished designing the layout of the interior here. And yes, I know, it took me a really long time to get around to the interior. You see, the thing is I actually ended up doing some volunteer work over the weekend. Days doing volunteer work, so I didn't really have a whole lot of time to just get around to working on our little mod project. So we're kind of running out of time really quick here. I mean, we only have until the 31st to get this mod finished, and we're only on the first interior cell. So the thing is that we got a layout here, and this is the layout of our Velothrian Manor. It's not exactly a perfect match for the exterior. I tried to get it to look somewhat like it does on the exterior, but like with a lot of Morrowind interiors, it isn't exactly going to perfectly match. And you know, here's the thing: as long as it's a close, you know, close to scale, it's probably So, for example, it's not as bad as Underscore and now Terrible. It doesn't match the exterior at all. It's like you got mansions in the space of a closet for some reason. Here, I think this is more realistic. We've got our little tower over here. Our tower is 3 stories tall. This opens out onto the docks in the back. And this is our front entry right here. It's a bit larger, probably, than it should be, but I needed the extra space in order to get the stairwells to go up and down, so that I didn't really see a way that we could avoid that sort of situation. And we've also got a little basement. Now, here's the thing, with this Velothrian mansion, is that the player will be sent to investigate this place after a nephew of an uncle in some village or something. It tells the player about how the uncle hasn't reported in so many months, and it turns out the uncle has actually been killed by something along that nature. So here's the thing: this first interior has been abandoned for it's going to be pretty much ramshackle, to say the least. You're going to have tossed over furniture, you're going to have moss growing on the interior. And I actually think I'm going to have the basement down here be flooded, you know, got some Bitter Coast scum, as they call it, or, you know, it's that mossy water stuff that you see in the Bitter Coast region. I'm thinking I'm going to put some of that down here in the basement. And the idea is that when the player first encounters the mansion, they're looking for the uncle's body, and when they find it, they'll report back to the nephew. And then that'll start the quest to actually start fixing up the mansion. And when they fix up the mansion, they'll discover an entrance to a dungeon beneath here in the flooded basement. So, you know, I think that'll be a lot of fun, you know, for the player to do. And we'll have a bunch of Daedra, you know, just wandering around here. Maybe a few scamps, a Daedroth in the back, perhaps. And who knows, maybe a winged Twilight, you know, just hiding around somewhere in these lower levels. And as for what each of these rooms is going to be, probably, I'm thinking that the central foyer, lounge, and dining area are all going to be up here. And we might also add it in the kitchen up here, I'm not really sure on that. We're going to have some storage and display area down here. The basement is going to be storage, but it's going to be flooded, so you got to keep that in mind. This area right here in between is going to be a bedroom. And up here we're going to have a magical lab and study. And then we'll also have access to the roof, and we'll probably be doing a little bit of work on the roof later on. And anyway, the uncle is probably going to be in the bedroom back here, and he'll of course be deceased. And of course it all looks pretty boring right now, but once we start detailing, it'll look pretty interesting. And the trick we're going to use is that when the interior is not going to be this same interior, it's not going to be the same interior. Instead, what we're going to do is we're going to use a trick that Bethesda uses a lot of the time, and that is we'll apply a second interior that's based on the layout here, and we're going to replace this interior with that interior when the time comes. You know, we'll just have, well, really we're not replacing the interior, we're just creating a second interior that the player will load in from the exterior once everything is done. And I'll show you guys how to do that later on. So, I pretty much laid out my plans for this first interior, and now it's pretty much time to get down to business. For the most part, I'm not going to be recording myself doing that, but I'll record a little bit of it when I have a bit more of a better idea of exactly how I want everything to look. So, till then, I'm just going to leave off here. Right, so I've sort of gone ahead and done a lot of interior detailing, as you can see here. And basically right now, I just have the sort of layout for most of the interior. We haven't quite gotten up here to what I believe we're going to have as the study right here. This is going to be our study, sort of perhaps a slight mix of a study and a library up here. But real quick, let me just go ahead and show you guys the sort of layout I've designed. So the main foyer is right here, right? And this has some, foyer entrance seating. You got some storage right here, some display space over here. You've got the kitchen over here, which includes this bit over here, where there's a bit more food preparation, and you do the cooking over there in the actual fireplace. Back here we have the bedroom, which includes a main area right here with the sleeping and all that. Over here we have the containers for storing clothing and, getting dressed and all that. We have a small seating area right here. Over there we got storage. And down below, over here, on the this is the entrance to our docks. So we got a bit of dining space right over here. And you also notice some cake stands over there. We got a few tables over here which might hold food. They might hold something else, like if this fellow is having a lot of company over, he can get in a few extra chairs and set these tables up to sort of serve his guests. And you'll notice, like I mentioned before, that the place is very much in a sort of ramshackle state, it has to be pointed out. And you also notice there's stuff has been tossed around here and there. So basically the idea is that this guy was killed about 6 months ago, so that means this entire place has been open to the wilderness and also the Daedra living in the nearby Daedric ruins for 6 months. So you can expect the place to be a little bit trashed. We've got the tossed over bookshelves over here, the knocked over chair. Got a knocked over chair down here, we've got some scattered container objects. And we're going to do a bit more stuff like that in terms of miscellaneous detailing, like bottles strewn about, cups, dishes, and things like that. Things have just been strewn about. And you also notice that we got these mushrooms growing here. That's not the original plant life. Presumably the original plant life died because they weren't being tended for, and the mushrooms just sort of moved in, because this is the bit of coast region. And we also have some trauma roots down here. That doesn't necessarily make a whole lot of sense. But in this case, trauma roots often are growing in areas where things have been unkept for a while, so that's why I sort of went with that option. And I'm not completely in love with this design right here. The sort of pillars and the wall screen and all that, with a garden on both sides. But I thought it might be interesting just to sort of build the interior kind of like that and see how it looks. I also don't know if this passageway is actually wide enough for an NPC to pass through. It might not be. So that's something we're going to have to check out later, I suppose. And we still have the basement to do, which is just going to be a bunch of containers and furniture just sort of floating around in the mush. And anyway, you'll notice that something I've started to do here is a bit of narrative environmental design. You'll notice that there's this stuff right here. So my story is that this guy, Tutisi Velodi, or that, I don't know if I pronounced his name correctly, created him, and I made up his name, but even I don't know how to pronounce his name, so there's that. But anyway, the story here is that this guy, he used to be an adventurer, but he's been retired for years, and he gets the crazy idea one day to try delving into one of the nearby Daedric ruins. Turns out it doesn't work so well. And he runs home, he's being chased by some Daedra. He forgets to close the door or something, and the door is just left wide open. But he does take the time to barricade his bedroom a bit. And you'll notice that I have these containers here to sort of go along with that storyline, and something you need to consider when you're designing the environmental story about what's happened is, where did these containers come from? In my line of events, they probably came from over here behind these chairs, because we got a lot of containers over there, and there's enough space that some of these containers could have presumably come from over there. So he tries stacking a few of these containers as a barrier. Then he closes the bedroom door, which obviously did not work because someone just slammed right through it. He also turns over a table and moves a bunch more containers to sort of blockade himself over in this area. And you can see that obviously that didn't work. Whoever came in here, or whatever came in here, simply tossed the, move the crate to the side, tossing the barrels off to form a pathway, and there's a few stacks that were probably being used as leverage behind the main barricade, and they'd just been moved. And we're going to find the corpse over here, behind the table, poor fellow got killed by a Daedra or something else, and just sort of died in a sitting position right here. So that's basically what the story is going to be like, the environmental story, when the player discovers it. And, environmental story design is extremely important for things like this. I mean, if you played the Haunted Tavern of the West Gash, which was my major dungeon mod, that mod had a lot of environmental storytelling. You could tell from the environment exactly what happened to the poor people that lived there. And that's sort of my goal here as well, is I want to tell an environmental story about what happened to this guy, because obviously he was killed, the player gets sent to find him, they find his corpse. It's the same old story, but you want the environmental storytelling to be convincing. Someone lived here, someone died trying to defend their lives. They failed, of course, but obviously they're going to do everything they can to try and survive. So, yeah, we're going to use the environment to try and tell his story a bit. I'm also going to have a bunch of items scattered around that, someone like him might have possessed. I mean, we're talking about an ex-adventurer, so this guy was probably fairly wealthy, had a lot of loot from his old adventuring days, and probably had a lot of fond memories as well, which is probably why he got the stupid idea to try going adventuring in his old age. And also why he got the stupid idea of building his manor right between two Daedric ruins. Really a stupid idea, but nonetheless, that's the story we're going with here. We're sort of molding the story as we go. And of course, we also have this rug over here. I'm just keeping this as a placeholder because for the life of me, I can never remember which rug is which. That over there because we're probably going to use some of these in the library once we get that finished. So the next step is to, do the library, do the second area over here, and then start doing the basic cluttering of miscellaneous objects around the entire interior, like bottles, dishware, clothing, food-like items. But most of it's probably going to be rotted at this point because it's been about 6 months, so we're not going to have a whole lot of food just laying about, mostly just empty dishware. And you'll notice that today is March 19th. So yeah, we got most of this done in one day. And here's the great thing about this, okay? So, since we're basically using the same layout that we have here for when the player takes control of this house as their own personal manor, we just have to copy and paste the entire interior and just change a few things here and there to sort of fix it up and show it as a player, as something that the player can move into. So we don't really have to do a whole lot of work on that front so much. So basically, it's taking a little while to design the first interior, but it's going to count as 2 interiors in the end, and we won't have to do a whole lot of work on the second interior. What's going to take the majority of the time probably is going to be the 2 dungeon interiors that we have to design after we're finished with this. So, I'm just going to get right back to it, and I'll start recording again in a minute when I've got a little bit more work done. Alright, so it's been a little while since I last started up the recording, and, well, we've made a lot of progress, to be honest. The first interior is completely finished, and I'm just going to show you guys around a little bit. Here you can see our main entryway, and I've cluttered it up quite a bit. You'll notice a bunch of miscellaneous objects strewn about, and I've tried to place these in a sort of logical manner. You can tell that the place has really been sort of messed up over time, since this place has been vacant for about 6 months. A lot of stuff has been knocked over and, messed around. We also have our creatures have been placed. So these are a bunch of scamps. And we also have our mushrooms here in the middle with a bit of a garden. And I don't know if I actually showed you guys this before, but the library design is completely finished now, as you can see here. We have some shelving units off to the side and some study areas out here in the back. And, just ignoring the fact that it's completely messed up right now, and it's supposed to be like that, with, books being knocked all over the place, and random scamps just leaving bits of food all over the floor. It's a really nice design, I think, you got the fresco right there. It's a nice looking library. I'm really kind of happy with how this turned out. I also added in another floor up here that connects to the top of the tower on the exterior. You'll be able to access the top of the tower on the manor, and basically be able to just sort of lounge around up there if you so desire, or just take in the sights as the sun sets over the Bitter Coast region, which I thought would be, a bit of fun to do. We've got our bedroom pretty much finished over here, and you got our corpse in place over here, and let's see. We got this area, which I think I showed you guys before, and then we got this area right down here, and you'll notice that it's, it's been flooded, like I think I mentioned that already, but you got a bunch of items just strewn about, floating around, and, oh, yeah, that reminds me, something you're going to notice here is that a lot of the crates and barrels are actually rotting in this interior, and, wood does that after it's left alone in a sort of moist, wet environment over a long period of time, is that it kind of rots. And a lot of the time, mushrooms start growing on, crates and barrels like that, that have been left out in the open, in the wild. And so we've got some of that going on, and I've actually sort of taken advantage of this in order to use impromptu light sources. So as you can see here, it's they sort of give off a blue light glow because the mushrooms give off a blue light. But it's a way of sort of lighting up the interior without, having the sort of immersion-breaking candles and fireplaces and all that stuff lit up because, I mean, a candle isn't going to still be burning 6 months after, the last owner died. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So this is sort of a way to get around that and still provide some light sources in our interior without it being, completely dark. And now you will notice that we are vastly and quickly approaching our deadline. It is March 27th right now. That means we only have until April 1st to get everything finished and this video onto the channel. Though of course the Patreon subscribers are going to have exclusive access to this video until about April 5th, so the rest of you guys probably won't get to see it until, until then. But, yeah, we do not have a lot of time left, but on the bright side, I've actually finished up a lot of work besides this first interior. In fact, we have 2 interiors that are completely finished, and we have a 3rd interior that is mostly finished. Real quick, I want to show you guys this. This is the 2nd interior. It's a shack for the shipmaster that the player can hire to sort of transport them around the Bitter Coast region. And it's a pretty cozy looking shack, if I do say so myself. I'm pretty happy with how this shack came out. And this shipmaster is actually a bit of a book lover, so he collects a lot of books and reads them, and the player will actually be able to ask him a bit about what books he's reading, and he'll give some various responses. And that's just something I like to do. I like to build up characters a lot. And speaking of building up characters, the first quest has also been completely written. We also have a bunch of flavor text documents. like this right here. I believe in total we have about 4 flavor text documents that have been added so far, and we'll probably want to have about 6 or 7 when we're finished with the mod. And, you know, those are just like letters or notes that have just been left scattered around by the owners. We have 2 in the Manor that the player can find when they raid the place. And then we have 1 in the shack, and yeah, you know, it just sort of adds a bit of realism to the environment, since, you know, oftentimes we leave little notes or letters to ourselves, and those just get left around, and, you know, it's just a bit of realism, and it's a lot of fun to, you know, find that stuff and read it, and realize that these are real characters that, you know, have their daily lives, and aren't, that, you know, don't just exist for your pleasure. They do, so, you know, don't read too much into that. The third interior that we're working on is our first major dungeon interior, and this is pretty far along. It still needs a lot of work though. I mean, there's a lot of detailing to do, and I just want to show you guys this real quick. It's a pretty massive dungeon interior, at least for me anyways. It's a Velothian tomb that the player discovers underneath the manor that they've just purchased and refurbished. And as you can see, it's kind of large. You got this big central chamber right here that the player comes down into. I mean, they start off over here. They come down into here. There's a small chamber right here. They go out over here, and then there's this long bridge. And, you know, past this bridge is a few more chambers. And you've got these 2 separate wings off to the sides. Like, you got this wing over here, and you got this wing over here. They're slightly different, though they are very similar looking. And you can just sort of imagine that it's kind of an epic looking entrance into this main chamber. You got these stairwells off to the side, you got a bunch of banners and columns. It's pretty cool looking, though I don't know, it's a bit long and straight, which might be a bit too linear for a good dungeon design. I mean, I'm not really about that, but I'm just, you know, running with it for now. In total, there are 18 rooms in this dungeon interior, so it's quite a bit larger than most of Bethesda's vanilla tombs. I mean, this entire bottom area is completely flooded, and, you know, has all this muck going on, and with the water down here. And these upper level layers are, you know, above water, and you got some collapsed passageways and things like that. And of course, lots and lots of frescoes. And I've tried to be a little creative and varied in the sort of design here. So we have these rarely used hall pieces that have the openings in the wall where you can see into the next room. And these do not get used near enough in my estimation. I mean, they're a really fun tile set piece, you know, for just doing some creative designs. I really like using them. And then over here we have, you know, another room with a small opening. And you can kind of see that while I've designed this to be a dungeon, once the player sort of clears it out, it's going to act as one massive display hall. And, you know, they'll have to fix the place up first. And you can just imagine this entire area right here being an epic display hall. You can probably also imagine some, I don't know, library wings over here, and maybe a magic lab over here, or something like that, and guest bedrooms. I mean, really. And once the place gets cleared out, it could be a fairly nice player home interior. But that's, you know, later on. We still need to finish up the dungeon design. And again, we are quickly running out of time. We only have 4 days left in terms of deadline. We got 4 days to get all the quests implemented. I mean, we have the first quest partially implemented already, but then we still have about 2 or 3 more quests to do after that one. I've actually already written up part of the second and third quest, so a lot of the work has already been done. But yeah, we're really going to be closing in on the deadline here quick, because not only do we have this dungeon interior to finish, we also have another dungeon interior to finish. And we still need to do the fixed up versions of a lot of these interiors, which is going to take a little bit of time. But anyways, I wanted to show you guys what I was going to do with this Manor here is that I was going to just copy and paste the entire interior into a new interior cell. So first I'm going to create a new interior cell, and we're going to call it the Bitter Coast Velodil Manor, since you know, the name of the guy here is Velodil. And since he's deceased, we're just going to use his last name as sort of a title for the manor that the... I think there was a bit of a lag spike right there, so hopefully that wasn't all lost in translation. Anyway, we're going to just quickly set up the light settings here. Nothing too fancy. Go ahead and put it in 0.75 because it is a smaller interior. And then what we're going to do is we're going to copy and paste all of this, basically. Copy render. And then we're going to paste it into this new interior cell. And then we're going to do the rather long process of basically cleaning the entire place up. We're going to get rid of most of the miscellaneous items that are scattered around. We're going to upright the furniture into a more correct position. We're going to replace all the containers with new containers that can hold a lot of items, because this is supposed to be a player home, right? So players want to use want containers that hold a lot of space for organizational purposes. I know that always annoys me when a container runs out of space, and you can also see that I've already created a bunch of new containers right here that have a cap of 55,000 weight, and that should hold most things that players can come up with. And we're going to replace most of the containers here with that, and we're also going to basically make this into a sort of storage and display hall right down here. And we're going to be doing the same here. This is going to be converted into the display hall. This is going to be the bedroom. We're probably going to get rid of the table and stuff over here and make this a sort of skooma den, because some players are into using skooma and like having a skooma den. And we're going to clean up the library, maybe leave a few books here, but most of the shelving unit space is going to be left for the players to use. Same down here with the main entrance hall. We're going to leave some of the shelving space open with just a couple of pots and things, you know, to be decorative. And actually, you know, that brings up a good point I should mention. You don't want to clutter up a player home too much with miscellaneous items, because there is a major bug with Morrowind, in that every time you add a new mod to your save game, it basically resets the interiors of all of your previous mods that you have loaded into your Morrowind installation. And so basically it respawns all the items that are present in each modded interior from before you added that mod. I might be explaining this a bit difficult. It's a difficult way. I'm not really sure how to explain it best. Okay, so for example, say you install this mod first, and you know, you get rid of all the items that are on display because, you know, they're in your way, and then you set up your own items, and then you install another mod, like say of Justice and Innocence, and then you come back into your home and you find that all those items that you already got rid of have spawned back magically in. That's a bug with Morrowind. It does that every single time you install a new mod. So in order to make it easier on the player and not have to, you know, reorganize their decorative space each and every time they install a new mod, we don't want to leave a whole lot of miscellaneous items around. Like I was saying, we don't want to leave a whole lot of miscellaneous items around, because that would be extremely inconvenient for the player to have to, you know, go through removing all this miscellaneous junk again and again and again every time they install a new mod. It's annoying. So that's an important thing to consider when designing a player home. Obviously it doesn't affect statics or containers or anything like that, mostly just miscellaneous items and potions and enchanting items, or, you know, like enchanted scrolls and things like that. So we want to leave as few items as possible while maintaining the space we want to maintain a cozy but we want to use as few items as possible in order to achieve that effect so that it doesn't bother the player too much. Because again, the main purpose of a player home is to be able to display their own stuff. That's the main reason why most people get player homes. And you can't do that if things are just spawning in all the time because of Morrowind's ridiculous bugs. So, I guess that pretty much concludes that bit of a lecture. So, yeah, just something to keep in mind if you're planning to design any interiors for player homes in the future. And with that said, we're going to start fixing this place up and finish our first dungeon interior cell. And then I'll get back to you guys once we've gotten the first quest completely integrated into the game, and also got this interior cell all fixed up into a sort of player home like state. So until then, I'm just going to leave off here. Alright, so our first big dungeon, and probably going to be our last dungeon as well, has now been finished, fully detailed. We've got lighting going on everywhere, we've also got enemies everywhere. And this really turned into a much bigger dungeon than I was expecting. It hit about 1,600 objects, including 81 light sources, which is a bit ridiculous. And the face count is 1.5 million, which is not advisable under any conditions. In fact, I think in a previous video, I actually told you guys straight out that you should try to keep your interior cells below 500,000. I basically just disregarded my own advice and just sort of went crazy with this interior cell. And here I'll just sort of zoom out a bit so you can get a good look at it. And yeah, there's a ton of stuff going on in here. We got our little necromancer over here who's been stuck down in this tomb, just raising undead. In total, there are 42 hostile creatures and NPCs in this interior cell. So this is going to be one pretty big dungeon for the player to fight through, and these are actually my own custom undead creatures that the player will be facing here. Not not the weak things that you'll find in vanilla Morrowind. Now these guys are a slightly higher level. They also have random loot that is from a random loot from my own personal leveledness. So you're going to find some rather interesting things that these guys are going to be carrying. They might carry a glass longsword. A glass is the most powerful weapon that these guys hold, and the chances of you running into one carrying a glass weapon are extremely slim to almost none. But the possibility is still there, and that's kind of what I like to have in my game, Oh, we just hit a bit of a lag spike, but like I was saying, what I really like is, the random chance of encountering some strange and unusual loot in my game. That's something I've always loved. It's sort of a D&D concept, and it's something I like to include in all of my mods, is the possibility of encountering something you might not have expected to, find, like, say, a skeleton carrying a glass weapon, or a skeleton charging at you with a crossbow even. Some of these guys have random loot for crossbows. So you don't know what to expect really, and that's the fun part. And since I haven't really showed you guys the detailing in this interior yet, I guess I should just show you a little bit of this. You can see that the dungeon is in a very much run-down state. It's a tomb in the Bitter Coast region that's been buried and forgotten for who knows how long. So it's kind of what you might expect. There's a lot of boulders everywhere and rocks and blocked off passageways and moss growing everywhere and vines coming down from the ceiling. It's pretty much in a big, massive state of disrepair, and a big part of this mod is the fact that you can fix this entire thing up and make it an additional part of your player home. And I'm not going to show you guys the converted player home state of this dungeon yet. I want to keep some things, sort of secret, because the goal is to get you guys to actually play this mod after it gets released, not just show the development of it. So I'm not going to show you guys everything. In fact, we have another dungeon interior cell that I'm not going to be part of in order to, avoid spoilers. And we are going to do a playthrough, a little bit of this dungeon, and then a little bit later on with the Velodrill, or Velodil Manor, and also the first quest for the mod. I'm going to show you guys, me playing that like a showcase towards the end of this video, and that's probably going to be the next thing we do actually, because I'm not sure if you noticed, but according to the timestamp down here, it is the 31st of March, 11:45 p.m. So yeah, everything is basically finished at this point. My main concern really is that, well, this interior is going to lag on most lower end to medium end computers. So what I think I might want to do, maybe something post-release or something, right before the release that I'll do like on April 1st or on April 2nd, is cut up this interior into 3 interior cells. It's kind of conveniently set up for that already. You got your west wing, you got your east wing, and then you got your central compound, and we can easily divide this up into 3 interior cells, and that should hopefully reduce the particular. And yeah, anyway, so that's our dungeon so far, and I'm not going to show you guys anything else to avoid spoilers, but you can expect this mod to be released on about April 7th to April 8th. The reason why it's going to be April 7th or April 8th is because the Patreon exclusive access to this video for, I think it's 5 or 6 days, and they get to decide whether or not this becomes a permanent show on the channel, or whether this just remains as a single pilot. So we won't be releasing the mod until this video is made to the general public. So the mod gets released at the same time that the video gets released, so you can expect that to just show up on April 7th or April 8th, whichever day it is, since I still need to finish up this video and get it out to you Patreon subscribers. But yeah, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to do a playthrough of the first couple of interiors that you'll find in this mod, and also the first quest, and then we're going to leave off there and we'll have some closing comments, and you guys in the general subscriber base will poll, or well, you won't find a poll, you'll find information about what is acceptable, some acceptable guidelines of the kind of mod suggestions you can make for the end of April. So yeah, that's just something to keep in mind. So let's move on to the actual playthrough, and I did eliminate some bugs already, but we might encounter 1 or 2 bugs on the playthrough, and if we do, I'll fix that before the mod gets released, so don't worry about it. Alright, so our quest sort of starts out in Gnar Mark, where you'll encounter the concerned nephew. I believe this guy's name is Davamir Velodil. He'll tell you about his uncle and how he's been missing, and he'll give the initial quest. And you also find a lot of extra dialogue, like a background story, and basically he has a ton of unique dialogue that you can find under various topics. And I like to give my characters a lot of weight in that respect. And here you can see the exterior of Velodil Manor, which I think came out really well. I mean, you got this lovely little path through the swamp that just leads straight up to the manor. You got some outdoor dining. And really, I just kind of like the sort of shape of the manor itself, It's got that sort of tower look, so you can see it from a distance. And you got the sun right there that's just sort of framing it perfectly. And the entire thing is awfully atmospheric, and we didn't really look at this part before when we were making the mod, but you can see the sort of upper level of the tower there that the player can get access to. And there's a hammock up there, there's some wind chimes, and it all looks, again, rather atmospheric and kind of cozy, honestly. You don't usually associate the word cozy with a bit of coast region, but it does look very cozy. And here you can sort of get an aerial view of how the manor looks, with the Daedric ruins there in the background. And I actually think it fits in rather well with the landscape. Moving on, you'll almost immediately get attacked by the Daedra when you enter Velodil Manor for the first time. And there's a ton of scabs in here. You got a Daedroth that's just sort of shooting toxic balls. And you'll get a journal update when you enter telling you all this because, you know, Captain Obvious. And once you've killed everything in here, you know, you can just sort of browse around. And, you know, it is kind of interesting to see this entire sort of man in its sort of state of disarray up close. It looks a lot different when you're doing it in the editor. And it just feels a lot more real when you're actually just sort of exploring it as a player would. And again, I really like how this interior came out. I think it's, again, very atmospheric. I think it hits all the right notes in terms of environmental storytelling design. I mean, you got tossed over chairs, you got all this disarray, and a random scamp that we missed the first time around. And to my eyes, you know, it looks like a place I want to go visit and explore. And that's that's the main thing when I'm designing a dungeon or an interior. I want to create something that I, the player, want to explore when I'm playing the game. So that's what I, you know, decided to try and create in the editor. And, you know, it's basically the same logic as any game designer. You know, when you hear Todd Howard's talk, he says that he wants to design a game that he would enjoy playing. And it's the same thing with modding. When you're designing a mod, you want to design something that you actually want to play and keep as a permanent part of your save game. And that should be the goal that you aim for. And here we have the corpse of our unfortunate uncle fellow who got killed. And you'll notice it gave a journal update as soon as I touched his corpse. Here's also a flavor text document. His journal. Which, the journal is actually really long. I think it's about 2,000 words. I may have put a little too much effort into that. But anyway, once you found the uncle, you can report back to the nephew and give him the terrible, terrible news, and he'll offer to sell you the manor for a modest 20,000 gold, which is actually quite a bit. This manor does not come cheap. But with that said, it is a rather cozy looking manor once it's been all fixed up. I mean, here you can see the fixed and refurnished interior here, and I really think it looks quite lovely. It's got a lot of atmospheric charm, especially with the fireplace there and the garden down below. And here you can see the library, which has been all cleaned up. I do think the lighting in here is maybe just a little bit too bright. I don't know. I think it's those Dunmore floor lamps there in the corner that have just made it a little too bright. And here you can see the third level here that sort of divides the library from access to the roof, and that's basically a tiny hallway with a bit of storage in it. And here you can see the bedroom, which we have that little skooma din there on the side, along with some display and storage space, which the player might find useful. We didn't change a whole lot about the bedroom, to be honest. I mean, I kept a lot of the miscellaneous items there, just for, you know, atmospheric detailing. And we, of course, changed the lighting to some red lighting. And down below you can find the dining, which includes a few dining items there on the table. We're keeping most of the tables clear of items, except for that one or two minor exceptions. And here you got some more gardens, and some of these lovely Ashlander lights that I just love. They have those multiple colors that look really great. And down below here in the basement, you can see that we've turned this, what was once a swamp, into a nice looking display hall. We got some comberry bushes. And we also have a locked dungeon, and you'll have to find the key to unlock that dungeon hidden somewhere in this manor. And I'm not going to, you know, spoil anything. You'll have to find the key on your own. But, you know, you just want to keep your eyes open when you first enter this manor, you know. Look around for anything that might be out of the ordinary. And anyway, the last thing we're going to be taking a look at here is our first major dungeon. And I just wanted to give you guys, you know, a quick look at this, since it's a rather large and epic scale Velothian tomb. And as you can probably tell already, there are a lot of frame rate issues with this dungeon. I mean, I told you guys it was going to have frame rate issues, and it does. It does. We are going to have to make a frame rate friendly version. In fact, we're not even going to make a frame rate friendly version. We're just going to change this version to be frame rate friendly, because most computers, this is not going to be playable. I mean, the FPS here is about 9 or 10, which is quite ridiculous. I mean, this dungeon looks fantastic, I think. It's very atmospheric looking. I think it really hits the mark for a swampy tomb. But that said, And that doesn't matter if you hit all the atmospheric charm details and all that. If no one can play the bloody thing, it's, well, it's basically pointless, isn't it? So that's something we're going to have to work on before we can release the mod to the general public, because it really needs a frame rate that is at least acceptable on most computer systems. So we're probably going to divide this up into about 3 separate interior cells. But anyway, you can see another part of the tomb here, and you know, it really does look fantastic with what we have right now, and it's going to be a shame to divide it up, but we kind of have to. And we did just see a skeleton with some glass items there. I mean, we might want to change the level list as well so that glass doesn't show up quite as frequently as it currently does with these skeletons. It turns up a bit more than I was expecting, honestly, but we do also have about 40 skeletons in here, which is another reason for the bad frame rate. I mean, alright, so our first mod for our Modder's Challenge is pretty much complete. I really like how it turned out, personally. Though I do have a few issues, particularly with the frame rate in the tomb, which is quite frankly abysmal. I'm not even sure if I would really classify it as playable. I mean, clearly it's playable in some areas, but you have to consider how it's going to play out on lower-end computers. So it's a good thing we're not actually releasing the mod until like April 7th or April 8th, which gives me enough time to go through and make a frame rate version, and that's going to be put into sort of divided out into 3. And I think we may have just hit a lag spike there. So just to reiterate, we're going to divide the tomb up into 3 separate interiors. We're going to have 2 different wings, I think. We're going to have the western wing and the eastern wing, and then we'll have the central compound. And that should make it a lot easier on playability and ensure that it actually can run on lower end computers. You gotta remember that when it comes to Morrowind players, there are a wide array of different kinds of people who are playing Morrowind. A lot of them are playing Morrowind on old laptops or old desktop computers, and they tend to be a bit lower end. They can't really handle those sort of large interior cells that have a lot of lag. And a lot of that lag is, I think, generated by all the light sources and everything. And we did have to cut back on a few features that we had planned for this mod. I was originally going to have a merchant's hall and have Layour Manor be like a stronghold that you could build up over time. But unfortunately, we didn't have enough time to do all of that, so I'm really satisfied with what we did manage to get in. And I guess we can always leave open the possibility of doing expansion, like DLC for Layour Manor in the future. And that would be a lot of fun to do. And we might even come up with like a little poll thing to ask users on the Nexus what kind of features they'd like to see in a upcoming update. Like, would they like to see a merchant hall or something like that? And that'll be a little bit of fun to do. But anyway, we've got enough here for a finished mod, and I like what we have. So really, the last thing to do is actually make the README file. Now, what I usually do is I take an existing README file that I have, like a hermit's request here. This is a README file from 2009, I think it was. I'm just going to copy and paste this into a new document. So there we go. And I'm just going to like change the name and then, you know, fill out all these different areas here with any updates that need to be updated. You could also use the README generator that was released by sort of blanking on the name now. You know, the guy who runs the Morrowind modding wiki, that guy, and it's a really great little program that'll automatically create README files for you. But since I already have an established format for my README files, I don't really use those sort of things. So I've got my README file here, and something you'll notice is that it ends right here. So the thing I like to remember is that some computers load up notepad documents like this at a different resolution. So I like to leave a lot of spacing here so that it's easy to read. I hate it when people write a README file and they just go on and on and on, and of course a notepad just continues along into infinity practically, and you have to keep scrolling to the side to actually see the end of the sentence. It's just really inconvenient and poor organization. So, the name of our mod is Of Dungeons and Abodes. Or is it Above Abodes and Dungeons? No, that doesn't sound right. It's of Dungeons and Abodes. Which is a really generic title. And I don't know, do I want to keep that? I mean, another good mod name might be the Manor, but that might sound just a little too much like a house mod. And I want to emphasize the fact that this is a dungeon house quest mod in particular, with an emphasis on the dungeon part, because the dungeons are really sort of the big thing of the mod. I mean, that's most of the content right there. So, yeah, I think we'll just keep Of Dungeons and Abodes for now. Kind of a working title. We'll see if I change my mind by April 7th or 8th, or whenever we're releasing the mod officially. We do not need version history, because this is version 1.0. We do not have anything to update there. So we're just going to get rid of that. That means we're going to have to renumber a bunch of this. Save games. Actually, we don't need this section either. Yeah, okay. So, yeah, this is all about using this with an older version of a Hermit's Request. So, nope, don't need that. We do need this section. We need that section. Bugs and conflicts. That mentions conflicts. We're probably going to want to keep that. Upcoming releases. Well, we can probably replace the upcoming releases segment with the Modder's Challenge so that people can find that down there. Credits, mostly going to be the same. It's going to be slightly different because we're using a Modder's resource, which I don't know if I mentioned before, but we're using a Modder's resource. We're using wooden mannequins in the Manor expansion, which I did not show you guys because I don't want to show you. So we'll need to update the credits section, contact information. Should probably also be updated. Glossary. Okay, so the glossary section, this is where I like to keep terms and people. Sometimes I do profile of characters. Like I do character profiles down here in the glossary section. So we're going to need to update that because this is obviously for a completely different mod. Hints and explanations. This is where all the spoilers will go. And it's sort of a frequently asked questions category. So if people aren't, sure of what to do next to proceed in the quest line, or they can't find the key to the dungeon, or they're looking for a particular item, they can just, scroll down to the hints and explanations, and it's all right there in the README file, and they don't have to, post a comment on the Nexus asking about that. Though comments are always welcome. I like comments, I like feedback. I hope a lot of you will actually go out, try this mod, install this mod, play this mod, and then leave a review. Because reviews are great. I mean, as a modder, one of the big things we live for is getting reviews and feedback. We live for the feedback. A lot of us are feedback junkies. I mean, we'd still do this even without feedback, but we really like feedback. Now that I've, emphasized that enough and basically bash you guys over the head with the fact that I would really like a review, that pretty much wraps up everything we need to do. So just the README file is what we need to do right now, and oh yeah, we need to clean the mod. We're also going to need to clean the mod. I'm probably going to run that through with Morrowind Enchanted Editor and TES3 command and make sure we get it completely clean. There shouldn't be any dirty references or anything, but if there is, like if I just forgot something, we should be able to clean that out. And yeah, so frame rate version, README file. That's pretty much it. I also really need to proofread all the writing in here. There is, I think, between 12,000 and 13,000 written words in Of Dungeons and Abodes, which is a lot. And I didn't really proofread it very closely, so I'm going to have to do that as well between now and when we release the mod. Because I guarantee that there is going to be grammatical mistakes somewhere. I just know it. And yeah, that's something important that you should always do. And I might even give a preview copy to someone else so they can do a little bit of testing and make sure that I crossed my T's and, corrected my grammar and everything like that. Oh, it's always a good idea to have a second pair of eyes when you're dealing with a lot of words. I mean, 12,000 to 13,000 words is a lot of words for one person to review and make sure everything looks right. It's pretty much impossible, really. You're going to have mistakes if you just have one person do it, and inevitably someone's going to report some errors after the mod gets released, and that's going to happen no matter what, really. They're going to find a bug, or they're going to find an issue, or they're going to find a conflict. They're going to find something, and that is inevitable. Whether you're a new modder just starting out, or you're a long-time professional modder, you're going to make a mistake somewhere. It's guaranteed, pretty much. So anyway, with that said, of Dungeons and Abodes is pretty much complete, and this was a great, I think, first episode for the Modders Challenge, and really kind of showcases what's possible when you're working within a time frame of just a single month. And of course, you guys can make your suggestions for a challenge that you'd like to see, a mod you'd like to see down in the comments below, and I encourage any and all challenges that you might have that are related to, content mods, that is, quest mods, town mods, landmass mods, house mods, and, basically those kinds of mods. I cannot create 3D models. Do not ask for that. I can't do it. And I'm also not particularly a companion modder, but I can do a companion mod if you ask for it, I guess. But it might be a bit tricky. It would be a new field for me, but I'm up to it, if you guys want to challenge me to do something like that. So, yeah, I guess that's pretty much everything. So, just leave your challenges down below, and anyone who posts a challenge within the first 48 hours is going to have it included in an online poll that'll be up for about 5 days that you guys can vote on. And the challenge that gets the most votes is the one that we're going to be working on through to, I guess, May 7th? Whatever 4 weeks is after we get this video out and after the polls close. That might actually be May 12th? 15th? I don't know. We'll figure out what the date is when we're done with it, and we have everything finished and done with. So I'm not going to worry about that now. That's just something to consider in the future. So just post your suggestions for challenges you'd like to see, and I'll see you all next time.